Hey guys, welcome back to Digital Games, the channel all about video games and health. If you haven't been here before, my name is Dr. Amiad Fredman. I am a medical doctor that specializes in digital health and games for health. So my focus really is on the product and design side of things of these software-based technologies that we use to better our health. And I have a specific interest and focus in video games and using games and principles of game design to create better tools for health, better, more engaging tools for health, or relevant to the video today, sometimes therapies that actually get at our health and potentially our treatments for us. And so the topic of today is we're looking at Akili Interactive, which is a name that we talk a lot about on this channel. Akili are the company, the makers behind the prescription video game EndeavorRX. So this is the first ever prescription video game for the treatment of ADHD in children. Currently, this is a game that your doctor can prescribe for your child if they have ADHD. Right now, the on-label, the validated use is children 8 through 12. But today, things changed a little bit. So there's some exciting news that I woke up to. This is about a month out of Akili announcing the exciting clinical data that came from a new trial actually using EndeavorRX for adults, which showed really impressive results. In fact, in a lot of ways, even more impactful results versus the children that EndeavorRX has been used for thus far. And so a month out of that, they've now released EndeavorOTC, OTC meaning over the counter. But this is a game that anybody can download, it seems like from the Apple Store, and play without a prescription and potentially have some therapeutic effect. So we're going to get into all of that. There's a lot to discuss here. This is a big change to Akili's model. This is a big change to video games as a therapeutic. And I think a lot of people might be excited about the idea of freeing this game up from the prescription. We're going to talk about that. If you're curious to learn a little bit more, right now I haven't played this game. So coming up to this channel, I'm going to download the game. I have an Android. So right now, EndeavorOTC doesn't seem to be available on the Google Play Store. So I had to bring out my old iPad. This is my iPad from medical school that they gave me to take tests on and let me keep after finishing medical school, which was, of course, worth all the many dollars of tuition paid. And right now it's usually dead and it gets charged before flights so my kids can watch things or play games on our flights. But yeah, I have to charge this thing up, and then once I do, I'll download the game. I had to order some more USB boxes because I realized I basically only have USB-C boxes right now. So that's in the mail. Thank you, Amazon. And then we'll get this bad boy going up, and we'll see if we can, stream me playing the game, potentially the journey. If you'd be interested in seeing that, let me know in the comments below. One thing I'm really interested in is, I don't have ADHD, but how could a game like this be helpful to anyone potentially in improving some areas of focus? I mean, I know that would certainly be something I would like to see, a skill I would like to train, right? So I think that now that this is freed up from a prescription here, it kind of opens the door. We're going to talk about it. So let's take a step back first, okay? Let's review what EndeavorRX is. I'm going to put timestamps below. This is like an off-the-cuff video. I haven't put a video in a long time. Work has, with my startup, has been really, really exciting, busy, right? And again, side note, if you'd be interested in hearing more about what I do, it's not for my startup, it's not directly in the games area, but I kind of stick away from posting about that on this channel because it's not video games related. But if you'd like to learn more, let me know. I'd be happy to share more about what I do for my startup, for my full-time job. But EndeavorRX is the first ever prescription video game that's authorized by the FDA actually for the treatment of ADHD. Again, its on-label use right now is for pediatric ADHD patients aged 8 to 12. And just kind of, a little bit of how it works. So the game was specifically designed to target key areas of the ADHD brain and key aspects of cognitive control that people with ADHD struggle with. So we're talking really about attentional control, the three key aspects of focus, interference processing, and multitasking, okay? So everything that game does is designed to get at those three aspects of attentional control, okay? So just as an example, this, is kind of what this looks like, right? So the game is sort of like your Endless Runner, Mario Kart, Temple Run type mobile game where you're controlling a character down a linear path and, trying to navigate to certain key areas, avoid obstacles. Meanwhile, you're collecting these creatures that are flying at you. And so let's kind of break down every aspect of the game and how it relates to those key areas of attentional control. If you're playing EndeavorRX, you're tasked with only collecting these creatures that are flying towards your screen that are a certain color. So at any given point, let's say you're being told only tap on the red creatures, but avoid the blue creatures. But be careful because those rules are going to change, and then you might have to only collect the blue and yellow and avoid the red. So this sort of ever-changing rule set and this task that you always have to be cognitive of as you're playing is really keying on focus, okay? And if you're thinking at this point, now hold on, because I know what you're going to say and you're going to explain the rest of the and I see the gameplay video and what's different about this with any other video game. Keep watching because we're going to talk about it, okay? Now, the more kind of navigating of your character and prioritizing certain actions while suppressing other actions. That's really getting at the interference processing. So in the game, when you are avoiding driving through, the pits of fire or running through the pits of fire, but intentionally navigating to these, blue or yellow waypoints that are giving you points, that's really getting at your interference processing, where you're paying attention to certain key stimuli and you're avoiding negative stimuli, okay? And so you're exercising those pathways in your brain. And then, of course, doing all of these different activities at once while navigating your character, while using the gyro controls, that's getting at multitasking. So all these things happening at once. What I just explained to you is a video game, okay? It's a video game that was designed to be a certain type of genre of endless runner type of temple run game, but also to kind of get at these specific key components to, target attention, right? It's just a video game. Now, what makes it a digital therapeutic is that there is an algorithm running at all times behind the scenes. And what this algorithm is doing is it is always learning from the player as the player is playing the game and is seeing where their ability is at and how well they're performing. And on a continuous basis, it's essentially raising the baseline. It's raising difficulty, if you will, to make sure that your brain and these key areas of your brain are always being stressed in the right way to keep you progressing forward. And if you get to a point where you need to come down a little bit, it comes down with you. But it always puts you at that peak, which is why this game is challenging, because it was designed to stress your brain. It was designed to exercise these key areas of your brain. And that is what the clinical studies have found that it does. So that is a little bit of background on EndeavorRX and its mechanism of action. Okay, but now let's dive in, and we're going to do this a little bit together on what's going on that allowed this game to now be, well, actually, let's go back even further. Let's look at the clinical data that came out of the study for adults. So we know that this game already has some validity and efficacy in children, but recently there was a trial for adults, actually. This was a study that enrolled 221 adults that were 18 years of age or older with inattentive or combined type ADHD. Patients used the video game treatment for 6 weeks at home, and what they saw was a statistically significant improvement in several measures of attention. And so the objective measures here was the test of variables of attention, the TOVA, which is an activity that has been used actually to somewhat define the deficit in selective and sustained attention and put that into a score. So it's helpful in kind of seeing, does somebody have a attention deficit and how severe? What it doesn't do is kind of tie that to someone's function in reality, right? So it's not necessarily, tied to their performance in school or, something like that, but it's sort of an overview look at their deficit of attention. And so they saw a statistically significant improvement in that TOVA from the baseline, and that baseline increased in this study by 6.46 points, which is actually 7 times larger than the changes seen in the original trial for pediatric patients that led to that FDA authorization. So some other kind of endpoints that were looked at in the clinical study here. So adults with EndeavorRX showed significant improvements in their ADHD symptoms, measured by the Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder Rating Scale, or the ADHD-RS. This, again, same scale that was used in the original study with the pediatric patients, and these adults had a statistically significant improvement on the inattention subscale and the total scale from this ADHD rating scale. This is a scale that directly measures the criteria, the symptom criteria from the DSM-5, so specifically looking at the diagnostic criteria and symptoms of ADHD. A pre-specified responder analysis also showed that 32.7% of all participants in the study demonstrated at least a 30% reduction in total scores on the ADHD-RS, which again surpassed the findings in the adolescent study they did, but also in the pediatric study they did, which was only 24%, so that's 6% greater. Nearly 3/4, or 72.5% of adults reported at least some improvement in their quality of life as measured by the validated ADHD quality of life scale, and nearly 50% of adults met a pre-specified threshold for clinically meaningful improvement. Now, I haven't been able to find the actual study of this. If I do, I'll make a more in-depth kind of analysis of the study. These are just the endpoints that I know that Akili has released. And I'm not sure if what we just talked about, the quality of life improvements, if those were statistically significant. My guess is that they are not, and that would be consistent with most of the quality of life improvements that were seen in the pediatric measure as well. But that could also just be a measure of the study, could be a measure of the sample size. I think more studies that target specifically quality of life and how this actually translates to the real world are really, really important. So it's really interesting here. So just taking a step back again. So we kind of think of, why was EndeavorRX created in the first place, and why was the target patient population children with ADHD? Well, the ADHD part is clear, right? We talked about that's actually how this game was designed, what it was designed to do. Now, there are other disease states and disorders that certainly have attention as a deficit, and this could be applied for depression, Parkinson's, lots of different things, but certainly ADHD makes sense, right? But why pediatrics? I think that was partly a market decision, right? That who would be interested in playing a video game therapy? I think especially this type of game, right? It makes sense that children would. Also, I think parents are excited about the idea of a non-pharmacologic treatment, right? And doctors too. Some of these drug therapies for ADHD have a negative side effect profile. It affects appetite, right? Sleep. And so if you know anyone, if you took these medications when you were a child, it's not always necessarily the best fit. So this I think made a lot of sense. And again, then you think about, well, why was this a prescription and why was this not just released to the App Store? So this is a really, really interesting point that I want to really dive into today, because absolutely, when I put up that video of me playing EndeavorRX, this was probably a year ago at this point. When I put up that video, if you look at the comments, there is a lot of comments of people really, really critical of this being a prescription video game. And unfortunately, just how our insurance in United States works, often, for the most part, not covered by insurance, which means that this is usually $100 for a patient for a month out of pocket, which for some people maybe is worth it, and for some people is not, and is a big expense. So let's just talk about that for a second. So EndeavorRX being a prescription, my feelings is certainly part of that decision was a business decision. That's the business model, and I think that that's important to acknowledge, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think often that's equated with, an evil corporation, charging an arm and a leg for a video game, $100 for a video game. But, I think it's fair to acknowledge that, this game took a lot of, time and resources to create. It's a business, absolutely, and they need to find a way for an effective business model. Just like, think about entertainment video games, there's all these different business models, the live service, free to play, microtransactions sometimes get a little bit of heat, but at the end of the day, these are businesses and they need to find a way to make money. And I don't think it's any different with this. Now, of course, this is with patients, this is with healthcare, so it's of course different than just a microtransactions. These are real people's lives you're talking about and their health. So I think that's just important to acknowledge. Now, I also think it's not all about the business model. There's also the component of having control over who's playing this game and how they're playing this game. And by having it be something that's prescribed by the physician, it brings the physician into the loop so they can also be involved in the therapy. And I think that's really important, right? And so they sort of are part of the care team, obviously, along with the parent and along with the child. And they're, it's part of the overall ADHD therapy regimen, which may include drug therapy as well. And so I think it's important to bring the physician into that conversation. And then the other thing is it just sort of regulates how this is played. So it'll by having it prescribed, the physician is the one who gives the education about the game, ensures that it's only the one patient that's playing the game and not sharing it with their brothers and sisters or friends, because again, that algorithm is supposed to be fine-tuned to the player, to the patient. So these are all the reasons I think that prescription, kind of why that exists, right? Whether that's the right model or not, that's a different story. Now, a lot of people, in the comments of that video and in general, people tweet at me at this because I talk about Akili a lot. They say, they don't like that it's prescription. So here we go. Now there's a game that's being released to the Apple Store, and you don't need a prescription for it. So I think it's really interesting why that change in model. I'm not sure what the business model is associated. I don't see if there's kind of a freemium aspect. I haven't downloaded it yet, so I have to see. You can say that for adults, potentially there's less of a concern about sharing the game with friends and it not working in the way, but they're obviously taking a different approach here. Also, this has not been authorized by the FDA, so it wouldn't make sense. You couldn't make it a prescription video game at this time. The claims that they're saying have to be very different than the prescription video game. The claims that Akili is saying of kind of what effect you can expect from having this game. I think they can point to the clinical study, which was positive. And so, overall, I'd say I'm pretty excited. I think if we kind of just look, it's interesting. So this was the post I saw from Akili this morning. So we're thrilled to announce the release of EndeavorOTC, a new immersive mobile video game treatment that is clinically proven to improve attention and focus, specifically in adults with ADHD. It's built in the same technology as Akili's EndeavorRX. It's available without a prescription. It's on the Apple Store. It's clinically proven. On average, trial participants saw an 85% improvement in their ability to focus. So again, important to point out here, it's clinically proven. That is true. The study was very impressive, but it is not FDA authorized for this population, which is fine. It just means that the prescription is not, is not the path here. It doesn't have to be FDA authorized to have a clinical effect. And if we look at the website here, it's a new website for EndeavorOTC, much different than the EndeavorRX website. I mean, this is much more, a website you'd expect for just kind of any type of app that you would see on the App Store. So kind of everything we talked about. So improve your focus. 73% of participants reported quality of life improvements, including 60% were better able to complete projects on time, 53% were able to manage multiple tasks at once, 54% were better able to keep track of important items such as their keys and their wallet. So also the measures here are a lot different, and there are more measures of function here. We have to look at what this 2 is to see if these were statistically significant or not. Reported improved relationships with others and better overall mood. A little bit of a gameplay snippet here. So it looks like pretty much the same game, which is what I would expect. That'll be kind of interesting. I mean, I played the game before in snippets, mainly just the demo. One time I got to play, the actual game just for a couple minutes, and it was really fun. So I'm excited to try it out. There's some instructions on how to play the game here. And, this is interesting. Again, now this is not prescription. There's no regimen here, but they can point to the clinical study, this was the regimen that they followed in the clinical study that led to that great data. So 6 weeks playtime, 1 week break, and then a second dose here of another 6 weeks playtime. But again, there's no way to enforce that now without the prescription. So this is out in the wild. Interesting, designed with patented FDA authorized technology. So they are, again, this game itself is not FDA authorized, but the technology that led to this game, of course, was from EndeavorRX. So, overall, I'm really excited about this news. I think a lot of people are going to be excited about this news. I think this addresses a lot of the criticism on Akili of putting their game behind a prescription, essentially behind a prescription paywall, right, and access. So this frees up accessibility. It does kind of put game therapeutics and Endeavor specifically into a little bit more of the wild, wild west, and where anyone can download this. And I think there's some really, really great things about that. But again, there could be murkiness in terms of education about this game, what it's supposed to do, how to play it, things like that. So I would be really excited once this thing gets charged up to kind of boot it up, share my experience with that, and just kind of let's document my journey, at least playing this game, and maybe see how it affects my life. I mean, I am really interested. I am doing a lot of things internally, working on myself to help my focus. Again, I don't have ADHD, but just in general, I think that's something that I've been wanting to work on. Where my brain goes when I'm not thinking, of particularly anything in particular, kind of where my brain wanders, and trying to control that a little bit more. Putting priority on the things that really matter to me, like my family, but also sure, as I'm working, if potentially I could really hone those skills and improve that skill set in terms of my own ability to focus and stay on task, that'd be amazing. I mean, I have this book all the time next to my desk here. So this is The Distracted Mind by Adam Ghazali, who actually is the brains behind the original Neuroscape game, which came out of a lab in UCSF, which was used as the blueprint of what would become Akili and EndeavorRX, right? So he's a founder of Akili Interactive, Adam Ghazali. So I highly recommend this book because it has some really interesting tidbits. The first, third or half kind of reads, well, it's a little bit more like a textbook, kind of explaining more of the science behind attention, but then you get more into sort of how it's sort of relevant and tricks and tips that you can even do, really interesting kind of studies and stories about attention and things that you can do to actually improve your own attention. And again, it does talk about video games in here. It talks about a lot of different things that have been used, that have been shown to help improve attention. So that's The Distracted Mind. You can pick that up. But yeah, if you like this, this was a different kind of video for me, just kind of off the cuff, but I felt that I had to share my initial thoughts after seeing this message this morning. If you're interested in this topic, if you're interested in video games and health, get in comments, say hi, tell me your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear from you. Like this video, subscribe. A little bit, just kind of transparently, a little bit slower with the YouTube content these days, like I said, as my startup is picking up speed and needing a little bit more of my attention. But absolutely, when I can, I'll make sure to drop a video. We have a impact review coming up from Dr. Matthew Tyler that I'm in the editing stages of now, so hopefully we'll drop that soon. Anyway, stay tuned, and thanks for being here, and we'll talk soon.